Okay, cool. So, first things first, how do I start a self-portrait? Well, just like with anything else in the class, we have to make our blueprint and we have to place our features in the right places. Um, we have to make sure we get like the length of your nose right or the width between your eyes. So, first thing I do, um, and I'll darken in my lines a little bit so that you guys can kind of see it a little bit better. But you're basically going to just look at your face and try to think of it as um, kind of this kind of tall oval shape. Okay, you clearly got like the front of your forehead here. You got your eyes, and it does get a bit thinner as it comes around towards the bottom, towards your chin. So you got kind of a narrow kind of chin that kind of goes up and around. It gets larger at the top. It creates kind of this elongated oval shape. And so that's essentially how we're going to pretty much start all of this. And I'll show you kind of how I'm starting. And some of the kind of standard measurements for human features, they've been passed down for centuries. And once again, kind of the Renaissance kind of set up a basic framework for human features. Now, having kind of these guidelines about, like the eyes are halfway through, and then your nose is like halfway between your mouth and your eyes. Those are just guidelines because everyone's face is different. I know for a fact that, I've got certain size features that don't exactly fit into those guidelines. Those are just created as kind of like the Renaissance style, like how to draw human faces kind of thing. As much as they are helpful, a lot of what we're going to be doing here is I'll be showing you kind of how I break this down. But for each of us, it's going to be slightly different. Some of us have like wider features, like a wider nose, or some of us, your eyes might be spread a little bit further apart. Some people's noses are a little bit shorter. So all of it is completely specific to your own face. I'm just going to give you some basic ideas about how to kind of place the features first, and then we can kind of start to go in more specifically. I mean, I'll be drawing my face, but we can talk about how to change up the placement. So at this point, I've just made like a very basic kind of oval shape. So notice how it kind of has that more narrow chin at the bottom, and then it kind of flares out near the top, where the kind of the forehead of the skull, it kind of flares out. Everyone's kind of face does that, at least from the skull point of view. And so that's the first way to start any of this, is to kind of make sure you've got a reasonably accurate shape of your face. And so now, always the first thing I like to start with is I'll go in and just kind of put, a y-axis in the middle of this basic shape, just to kind of give me a basic cut in half, just to, it just helps to be able to start to measure some things. So I always put kind of a y-axis through the middle of that kind of face. And now the first measurement we're going to make is, where do we put the eye line? If we take the corner of our eye and take our ruler across to the other corner of this eye, how high up do your eyes sit in kind of that basic kind of oval shape? Because remember, we're using a light lead. We've got our plastic eraser. We can always erase the 2H lines really easily if we just need to start adjusting some things. But if I'm looking at the mirror, just look straight on. You don't want to be looking up or down, because it'll affect, where you put this eye line. So just try to stay looking straight on at the mirror, and you can kind of, at this point, you take your ruler across, and I turned it across here, and I kind of just hold a horizontal right along my eyes here. I'm looking at the space to my chin compared to the space from my eyes to the top of my head. Okay, and a lot of how-to drawing classes will say that your eyes sit right in the middle of the skull. Like it sits right in the middle from, if you take it from the bottom of the chin to the top, they sit right in the middle. And I think mine are pretty close. I think they're just ever so slightly above halfway though. So if I were to draw kind of a halfway line, so I've kind of drawn these X and Y axis right now. My eyes and my face, if I'm breaking that down, I kind of think it's more, if halfway is about here, I think mine sit just above that kind of halfway line. And I'm just going to go in and place my eye line in relation to all of these axes. I'm going to put my eye line in. So I've got a couple of axes, I've got my eye line, and now I'm going to look at, I'm going to in a very simple way, take a look, and I've got this y-axis here, and this is nice because this is kind of where I can start to lightly indicate kind of a nose shape, just very lightly. We're not getting too specific here, but it does help me to just very lightly start to put in this eye shape, these eye shapes, just very lightly along this eye line. And I'm putting them essentially at this point right in the middle. I'm kind of looking at my eye here and kind of seeing it's got, my eyes aren't very big, first of all, mine are kind of small. So I'm just going to kind of put these small basic ovals and letting that eye line cut right through the middle of them. Just going to put some basic shapes there. So pretty standard, pretty basic. Thursday, we'll actually go in and really start to draw the features of them. The next thing I want to do is kind of mark between my chin and my eyes, where does the kind of the bottom of my nose sit? And essentially, if we were to take some horizontals from your eye line down, at least my nose really is pretty much smack dab between the bottom of my chin here, then here's the bottom of my nose, and then my eye line. This feature here pretty much crosses right halfway between my eyes and the chin. So on this basic oval shape, I sort of have these two, if I take these two horizontals, I'm just going to cut this part of the face in half essentially. And this will create kind of the area where my nose will sit. So I've just cut my drawing. I've made my eye line, which is about here, and then the bottom of my chin here. And I've pretty much just cut that essentially right in half, and that's going to be where I put the base of my nose. Okay. And then for a basic placement of the mouth, it's kind of the same thing. You look at the base of your nose, the base of your chin, and the line of your lips. It's very much in, once again, a kind of halfway point. So I'm just kind of making a basic kind of placement for the mouth. Now we will have to definitely kind of change kind of this basic head oval shape, because I know my chin is kind of a little bit longer. So I might want to just shift that just a little bit further down. So that we've got this basic shape here. So this is very simple. It's just, you got your eyes, nose, mouth. And then I kind of want to make some basic shapes now for where you place your ears. So if you look at the face, you have to look at the very tops of your ears. So this is where, once again, everyone's different. My ears, if I were to take this ruler and find a horizontal, top of my ears, they just cut across the face right above the eye. And the bottom of them pretty much lines up with my nose. So on the side of the face, you can just kind of indicate these ear shapes. The top of them will just crest over my eye line. The bottoms of them will line up with my nose. And I'm not really making a very accurate outline, but you can kind of see that they do have like this, they kind of flare out at the top and then they kind of come around. So I'm going to kind of just indicate that. Once again, everyone is a little different. So this is just a really basic blueprint of some very standard principles of how to break down the face. Some of them have been used for hundreds of years. Some instructors have kind of changed them up just a little bit, but like I said, some people say that your eye line is supposed to be right in the middle of your skull, and sometimes that is totally the case. Sometimes it's just a little different. All right. So we've got sort of our basic outline of a full frontal portrait. And yes, I mean, as I go in and we start delineating the features in more detail, I will be changing these contours. Like for right now, this is kind of our mannequin at this point. And then we're going to go in and really start to get some precise contours around this basic shape. But the thing to keep in mind when you're getting started is make sure that you get a pretty naturalistic oval indicated. I always like to cut it in half vertically so that each side is the same size as the other. Like the left side is a bit wider than the right side. I like to cut it in half so that you know that for the full frontal portrait, each side of your face is pretty much equal. First thing you'd want to do is take your ruler and kind of sight measure where your eye line sits. A good way to find out where your eye line sits is, once again, just make that y-axis right through the middle of this oval so that the bottom and top are cut evenly. That makes a really nice guideline to find your eye line. From there, generally speaking, the nose, like I said, you can kind of find it in between your eye line and your chin. The mouth is generally halfway between the bottom of the nose and the chin. Now these are all, once again, going to slightly change as we start to render the features, but and you may want to indicate that. If you really see that you want to be as accurate as possible, yeah, if the base of your nose is not exactly halfway between the eye line and your chin, mark it where it's supposed to be. Start to make these basic principles more specific to your face. Like I said, we're just going through the sighting and measuring at this point. So before we start going into all the features, I want to use the other side of my page here, and we will do the 3/4 view. Once again, we're just going to do a basic schematic of the 3/4 view. Okay, so we got frontal on one side, and I'm going to, essentially when we say 3/4 view, you turn, if you're looking straight on at the mirror, you're going to turn your head left or right, whichever position you want to draw it. But typically for me, it's where you can't see one of your ears. So you can really see one ear on this side, but you can't see the other. So if you're looking straight on, you can see both ears, and then you tilt your head until you can't see one of the ears. And it's really just, you just shift over, and they call it 3/4 view because the kind of front of the face, you're seeing about 3/4 of the face because you leave a lot of it on this side overlapped by your skull. So the key with this is really getting this initial shape correct. So as with the full frontal, you're kind of drawing it very symmetrically, and you want to cut it in half so you have both sides of it equal. With this drawing, no, you've got one side of your face is mostly covered up, and the other side you see quite a bit more now of this kind of back area of the skull here. You really see this ear, and you see this neckline come down as well. So first thing I like to do is, once again, I kind of like to indicate the center line of my face, and I kind of use my nose as an indicator. So I'm going to kind of just take this, there's a vertical from like the tip of my nose, and I like to draw this long vertical from kind of, it's just a vertical line, but I'm sort of thinking of it as where the tip of my nose is going to be. So I like to start by just drawing a really light vertical line here. And essentially, like I said, the tip of my nose this line is going to cut through the tip of my nose, which means basically on one side of this vertical line, there's very little of the face, and the other has pretty much all the rest. So if you think about it kind of that way, we're going to do a very similar shape to our full frontal. And the way that I like to do this is I really like to look at the contour. There's like this really nice kind of curve around. It's a lot. You have a very much longer curve here. Your eye line hits, and then the forehead really curves back. So on one side of this line, I like to generalize kind of that contour there. So it doesn't have to be perfect. I know that the eye kind of has this like little inset for the eye. You don't have to really draw that now, but if you think it helps, you can. So if you want to really simplify this, if you look at your eye line, if you wanted to make a horizontal line for your sort of your eye line, So that's my eye line, and I kind of just make this basic, sort of this basic shape using that vertical line as the tip of my nose. I'm just making a basic shape where the forehead kind of curves around and then it kind of goes that longer curve down to sort of a chin there. And I'm using that vertical line as where the tip of my nose is, so that I'm breaking this off into kind of small side of the face, large side of the face. That is by far the most important part of this drawing. Is you have to make sure that, for me, the left side of my face is just much, much smaller than the right side. So then I'm starting to go around the curve of my chin. I see this jawline and it connects to my ear here. I'm just going to kind of simplify that. And I'm just going to kind of go around and really kind of try to get the curve here around the back. And I notice that this contour here, my ear does overlap it and it comes in towards my kind of jaw. So I am going to kind of just very faintly kind of indicate where that ear could be. Now we'll get a little bit more specific as we start to kind of lay in these features now, but just made a really kind of simple shape where I've got a small side and a large side. Now let's kind of go in there and kind of see, now that we got a basic shape using that vertical line as the tip of my nose, let's kind of go in and place where these features could be. So almost like drawing comic book characters, you just want to make sure that you have a sort of natural kind of shape. If you don't want to put in the ear just yet either, and you just want to kind of just make the basic shape, I'll darken it in a little bit. It's kind of making that basic shape. So now, once again, even with the 3/4 view, same thing. The most important thing is to see where does the eye line intersect. And sometimes, I can just kind of hold this up and I'm looking at kind of the top of my head, like the very top of it, versus the very bottom where this kind of chin line hits. And once again, it's not quite halfway. So I'm still going to put a halfway. I'm going to put in my x-axis through that shape. And like I said, my eye line kind of sits above halfway. So I'm going to indicate my eye line. So I've got two horizontals there. You can see the horizontal that just kind of cuts the shape in half. And then I've placed my eye line slightly above it because it's not quite halfway. My eyes sit slightly above. The bottom portion of my face